role in all of that. As far as for the left, I think he's a net negative.
Yeah, that's
I imagine that they
Recently.
would say that they have,
The
but
way
they've
he argues
changed or
with
some
leftists
shit.
is very much like the right wingers he used to debate. Like it's not based on
agree.
fact. It's
Yeah.
all based on.
Yeah, I agree.
It's all based on feelings. It's all based on interrupting people, shouting over them, not actually allowing somebody to make a nuanced point. Things that he used to hold right wingers to, and he even uses a lot of their talking points that he used to argue against, which drives me nuts. So I think that really hurts the left.
I think it does too. Everything I see of him now
After this day, I think I'm
leads
gonna
me
go
to
bed.
question
Okay.
his overall current motivations for the things that he's attempting to do now when he has an audience that is thousands of people that do actually give a shit about what he says.
This is the
Role in all of that. As far as for the left,
Is this
I think
live now?
he's a net.
There's this thing where like no one says anything to me. When I'm on a podcast, everybody shuts the fuck up. Nobody says anything bad. Nobody says like Destiny's got a dumb take, blah 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 blah. But as soon as I'm not there, all these people crawl out of the woodwork to come on and talk about how I'm wrong about everything, how I'm harmful to my cause, how everything I say is fallacious and incorrect, how everything's just a horrible like debate strategy. They all have all these things to say. And then every time I'm there, nobody has anything. It's so fucking irritating. I hate it. Oh my god.
I got it. Listen, man. Don't worry. You got problems with me. I got problems with you, dude. Don't worry about that.
All right.
All right. Let's just move on.
Next fucking topic. Drop a fucking hot take.
I've been waiting for a conversation that wasn't meta for a while.
Right? Like, let's fucking.
Stream's been
fucking
going
go.
for like
We were
8
having
fucking
we
hours.
were having a,
Like, what do you mean conversation that wasn't meta?
what for a while? Like, it's been a while that we've been going on about this Destiny shit. Like, we were having a good fucking talk about how like.
We just
how,
want
like,
lefty
racism isn't
comrades that
racist.
can like forget about
And, like-
Destiny for like an hour. That'd be nice.
Yeah, I'd rather not talk about him. He sucks. Goodbye.
Hey, listen.
Uh-oh,
Do
here it
do we want Destiny in on this?
No.
No, he literally wants to come in.
Choice to never talk to the guy. I have no interest.
Well, lady wants to talk to him.
She can talk to him on his stream.
Okay, wait, hold on. Who's
this
running
isn't your
this?
stream?
Yeah, I was gonna
Just
say, who's
asking
running
you.
this?
Leon.
Who's running this? I think he wants to get in this.
Saying
this
my
is my
personal
way.
choice. I'll leave.
Leon, you want to bring him in? Bring him in.
bring him in.
I'm sorry, Irrelevant. I couldn't hear you. What is?
I believe Destiny wants to get in here. To have
Did Destiny actually tell you? he wanted
yes,
to join?
indeed. Yeah, in Discord DMs.
Not if he's gonna sit and yell and scream and insult me and call me stupid and everything else.
I'm sure he can play nice.
I don't fucking believe it.
I,
Okay, let's
Okay, so you don't want to have a conversation with Destiny.
No,
you
but
you
I-
literally came in here saying you wanted to have a
just told you
conversation
to
with Destiny.
fucking bring him in, irrelevant.
Okay, all right, chill. All right.
Honestly, at this point, it feels like it would only be fair to have him in here to give him. Hey, Destiny, how's it going?
Hey, I heard that my name got mentioned here.
Yeah, I think your name was dropped like 5 hours ago or something like that.
Oh.
Dude,
Wait,
it was
this
like-
has been
it
the
was like a
conversation for the past couple hours at least. Come on.
It's been a fucking hour. Let's not overplay it.
I think it's been an hour now, but it's been an interesting hour.
Okay.
I'm
So
just
what do you
getting ready
want
get
to say for
dogpiled
now?
Is all. I'm just getting ready for it.
Later in, it's your show.
Yeah, this is all you, lady.
Excuse you, it's my show.
Wait,
Actually, it's
all right,
Leon's
Leon, you're getting cucked. All right, you're like take the back seat on this one. All right, look, I mean, Lady Rain, you literally came in here saying that you wanted to have a conversation with Destiny. Here you go. Make it happen. You said you got a lot of problems with Destiny. There was a lot of wrong things that he said in the past. Go for it. Give him
Start
one.
loading up the sweatstanies,
Yeah.
boys. Let's go.
Right. Except now I'm feeling like as soon as I do, the two of you are gonna jump in.
Okay, I'll mute.
We'll stay out of this. This is not my fight.
Yeah, we'll let the. You're okay, lady.
Okay. All right. So Destiny, I legitimately have thought for everything I have seen of your content for the last several months that you were straight up an asshole. Like that. The only time, like when you sit and communicate with people, the only thing that you know how to do is to berate them, to abuse them, to attack them, to call them stupid, to call them dumb, to speak to them as quickly as you possibly can, so that some people, like, literally, I've been watching you in these podcasts, and you go as quickly as you can, and I literally can't even understand what you're saying when you're speaking that quickly. And I feel like you come at people who are even on the left the same way that you would come at somebody who's on the right. I have legitimate questions about whether you are actually truly racist or not. I have legitimate questions about whether you're actually truly sexist or not. And I have legitimate concerns. Now, outside of the last few months, I don't know a lot about where you came from and where you started and how you got. And I have had people tell me that you have done a lot of good. And I would like to see that, so that if I'm wrong about who you are, I would like to see the good that you have done. Now, I don't want to discuss Mike and Bad Money because, yeah, I'm consider myself very much loyal to the two of them. So let's keep that off the table. But I'm not going to run away from the conversation because I'm friends with Mike and Bad Bunny. And I should also show, I don't know if you guys can see this right now, but I'm shaking because my nerves are fucking shot. Because I'm legitimately afraid that having this conversation with you is going to get several thousand people from your community attacking me on a daily basis. I'm like honestly afraid that your community is going to come at me because you and I have had a conversation. I'm honestly afraid that Mind Waves and Irrelevance communities are going to start attacking me because I've had this conversation with you where I've told you what I think. Now, I would like to be proven wrong, genuinely, particularly about all three of you, Mind Waves and Irrelevant and yourself. And if I can only base what I know about what I've seen, and what I've seen, I genuinely have concerns. Like, to be entirely honest, I thought you were transphobic too. So I was of the opinion that you wouldn't want to come talk to me because I'm not a, full on passing trans person. So I was expecting some shit there. Now, I can say I've immediately been proven wrong by a few things, by the fact that you have sat quietly and calmly and allow me to explain the issues that I have. So I would like to say that you're automatically proving me wrong in a few things, but I still have these concerns. And the reason I have these concerns is because you have an extremely large community, and I want to see you do good. And I'm concerned that you're not taking responsibility for your platform and for your community when they choose to also attack people, whether you've told them to or not. And like, I'm legitimately worried and afraid now that I'm going to have like your community alongside Mind Waves and Irrelevant attack me on a daily basis because you and I have sat down and I have told you directly, these are the things that I am concerned about. Now, if Mind Waves and Irrelevant want to pop into that before you respond, I'm all for it.
I got nothing to say. Don't worry about it.
I just let my community know not to say any dumb shit.
Okay. Because I'm like shaking. I'm trying not to do stupid stuff that'll get me on live stream fails, where I'm like, breaking down, like, because I'm PTSD and I deal with a bunch of shit. So I'm trying not to like legitimately cry and shake because I'm really, really feeling extremely nervous and legitimately afraid. And I don't care if people think I'm lying or being disingenuous. Because I didn't actually expect that I would legitimately get the chance to speak to you face to face, because my viewer count's 15, yours is almost 4,000. You wouldn't have any reason to give two fucking shits about me whatsoever. But there you have it. I have some concerns because I have been told that you have done a lot of good, and what I have seen of you, I don't see that. And if it's just because I'm not seeing things at the right time and in the right place, if I'm catching your streams in the wrong places, if I'm seeing things and that are coming from your community that you have no control over, I'm sure there could probably be a whole shit ton of reasons for it. But these are the issues, and like, this is the view that I have of you. Thank you for allowing me to say that, and hopefully I have been at least as respectful and polite as I could be in telling you what my concerns are.
Okay. I wrote a few things down. I'm just going to rattle some stuff off, and we can go from there. First thing you said was that I seem like an asshole. I'm very much an asshole. If you agree with something I say, you're going to love everything of my stream. You're going to think I'm the funniest person in the world. It's going to be hilarious watching me dunk on somebody. If you disagree with what I say, I'm going to be the most obnoxious, pompous, whiny piece of shit in the world. I acknowledge that. That's definitely part of what I do on my stream. That being said, I have a ton of incredibly respectful conversations with a lot of people. Most of these people are not YouTubers, most of them aren't Twitch streamers, and most of them aren't people that attack me because most of them are looking to dunk on me for very personal reasons. You brought up the idea that I just berate people or call them stupid. It is incredibly rare that I do that. The only time I do that is if it's a conversation that started on very personal grounds. So for a lot of these conversations I've had as of recent with people tangentially like Bad Bunny or Mike from PA or Hassan or I'm sure there are a number of other lefties, that non-compete guy. There's others too. I forget their names. A lot of these do become somewhat personal because they usually make it pretty personal. If somebody wants to roll around in the mud, I'll do it for a little bit because I think that's fun. At the end of the day, I don't really care if I sound nice or not. I just want to make sure that the things that I say are correct. I do get personal sometimes with some people. Usually it's because I fucking hate those people and whatever. Not the best optically, or for the best optics or rhetorically, I guess, but I don't know. So that's just part of what I do. I take big disagreement with the ideas that I speak quickly. Now, if you've seen me on certain podcasts, like for instance, the Raj Royale, I'm literally trying to machine gun out 700 words per minute because everyone is interrupting everyone all the time. But I think generally, when I hear things like you speak quickly, it's usually a way to hand wave everything I say because the person has nothing else left to kind of like address in my argument. That seems to be the case. I've had multiple people address me with that one before, but they're never able to bring up a spot where, I speak quickly or I gish gallops over somebody. I don't think that usually happens. I don't think that's a serious critique of anything I do.
Okay.
You attack people on the left the same way you'd come at someone on the right is something you said. I do. I attack everybody the exact same way. I think if you don't understand your arguments, if you don't know why you believe in the things you believe in, or if you're out, especially if you're out trying to be a public figure that advocates for these issues, I'm going to come at you the exact same way. So for instance, if you're somebody on the right and you say something stupid like trans people aren't real because God didn't say so, I'm going to roast the shit out of you. If you're somebody on the left and you say some dumb shit like men and women have no differences between them biologically, I'm going to roast the shit out of you. If you say really dumb things, I'm always going to attack you on that. I'm not going to let you slide because we have some conclusions that we agree with. Now, just because we have a disagreement doesn't mean it has to turn into a shouting match. For instance, there is somebody that I hate with, at the moment, every fiber of my being. His name is Alabrel. I think he's a horrible advocate for the trans community, but we had a conversation. It was incredibly respectful. Neither of us were shouting at each other. I even hosted somebody that he told me to at the end of the stream to show solidarity with the trans cause. Now, that's a whole other thing, but we had a long conversation, and there was no shouting or screaming, any of that. It was a perfectly civil conversation. You said you don't know if I'm racist or sexist. I'm going to go ahead and assume that it's because you've either heard me say certain words or because you've heard me make certain arguments. I don't really care to address that. I think I have enough work that kind of shows my stances on racism and sexism well enough rather than arguing about one or two single words. We can go into that more if you want. I'm afraid that communities are going to attack me for having these conversations. If you're truly fearful of that, I don't know why you would come online and have these conversations at all. Now, that's not to excuse the behaviors of any communities. When I find people in my communities misbehaving, I don't ban them in just other people's chats. I will ban them in my chat, in my Discord, and in any other platform that I have access to, because I make it very clear that I do not tolerate people harassing people in other communities. But I mean, that's definitely something that happens all the time. If that's like a significant fear for you, I would severely reconsider this line of work because holy shit, people are crazy online.
If I can say that the reason that became a fear because I did not think that you would actually come to talk to somebody as irrelevant as I am.
Okay.
I'm
running
surprised you're here too.
Yeah, real quick, I'm just running down. There's 4 more. I thought you were transphobic as well because I'm not a full-on passing trans person, so I'm not even sure what this means. Whether or not you are passing or not passing as a trans person has nothing to do with the acceptance of that, unless you're into like transmedicalism or something weird like that.
No, I'm not.
Okay, sure. I maybe you thought I'm transphobic because I don't know where I stand on the trans athlete thing, but I feel like I not only
that's actually where it came from. Was I think there's like 3 videos where you were discussing trans athleticism, and I kind of felt like they were kind of transphobic takes.
Gotcha. We can go into that if you want. I don't think any of my takes are transphobic. I think I have a really good grasp for a cis person of trans issues, and I think I make pro-trans arguments really well on this platform, better than most of the people that I've seen do it. We can go into that if you want. You don't take responsibility for your platform or your community. I take a lot of responsibility for my platform and my community, more than most other people on this platform do. And if you're going to defend people like Mike, I know you don't want to explicitly, it's going to be really hard to do that while he's literally defending his audience, calling me a Gusano, or falsely claiming that he knows for a fact that somebody in my audience DMCA'd him, when those are two things that are going to levy a great deal of attacks on me and my community with pretty much no foundation. That's it. You don't have to defend him specifically. That's not what you're here to do. I understand that. 2 more points. I didn't think I'd speak to you. You have no reason to give 2 fucks or shits about me. I literally will speak to anybody anytime that wants to talk about any issue. It's part of what I do. I've talked to a lot of no-name irrelevant conservatives. I've talked to a lot of no-name irrelevant lefties. Basically, if you have an issue, I take you on and I usually chat with it, because it's, if for no other reason, the arguments usually are recycled a lot. That's not an insult to anybody, but you hear the same arguments used by a lot of people, whether it's Ben Shapiro or a random conservative on the internet, or whether it's ContraPoints or a random, lefty or whatever on the internet. And then the final thing that this all kind of centers around is what I've seen of you. I'm super curious what demonic content you've seen of me where I come off as a sexist, racist, transphobic person, because damn, that is so far removed from the reality that I've existed in over the past 4 or 5 years. And that's all my responses to everything you've said.
Vivian, you had problems with Destiny as well, right? Do you want to do that as well? Do you want to, or is it? Are we just doing one at a time? Yeah.
I mean, I said I don't think that the conversation that I had with Destiny post our Alabel, I felt like he wanted to railroad me into the scientific argument and completely ignored the philosophical argument around having that conversation. But that's that's neither here nor there. I think also Destiny just said that Mike was encouraging people in his chat to come and call him Gusano, or he had no problem with it or whatever. I don't watch a lot of fucking Destiny's content, but I did catch a little bit of his conversation with Mike, or one of his conversations with Mike recently, where Mike pretty explicitly said that he thought that was a really shitty thing to do and people shouldn't be doing that.
Just to be really clear on that, Mike explicitly multiple times repeated during our conversation that he had no problem with anybody in his community calling me a Gusano, and it was used over 200 times in his chat against me while we were talking about it, and he defended it explicitly in our conversation.
I mean, I remember you saying about the fucking 200 times and shit, and Mike's response was just that people shouldn't be doing that in the chat. Obviously, that's bad.
He did ban a single person for it. If I had people in my chat that were spamming... He
didn't ban a single person for it, no, I don't think he did.
Sure, if I was having a conversation with a trans person and everyone in my chat was spamming tranny or something, and I said, well, I think they shouldn't do that, and I didn't ban anybody or take any type of action against them, do you think that would be an appropriate response for me?
No, of course not.
Okay, so why wouldn't you hold Mike to the same standards there? Or what if I defended the word tranny for 20 minutes like Mike did, but I ended it with well, I wouldn't call someone a tranny. I think it's bad, but if people do it, it's fine. I don't understand why we wouldn't apply the same.
I mean, I don't think he didn't say, I think if people do it, it's fine. He said people obviously shouldn't be fucking doing that in your chat.
I don't recall him ever saying that. I feel like this is a pretty big... his whole chat was calling me that, repeatedly, and... I mean, I think he said it's an asshole thing to do. But
I'm not here to fucking stand Mike. I think he's fucking... I think he... I kind of get where he's coming from with the Gusano shit, but at the same time, I think he made a really fucking bad case for it. So,
okay.
I'm not here to stand Mike for that.
Sure.
I'm not a Mike fan or anything, but I do feel that our conversation went pretty fucking I do feel like you completely disregarded the philosophical ramifications of platforming certain arguments and certain points of view that literally don't deserve to have a valid don't deserve to have a platform.
I mean, I talk about the philosophical justification for platforming all sorts of points of view all the time, so I don't know why you think I would avoid that conversation. I might have been really frustrated after talking to Alabrel. I don't remember if that's when we chatted.
Yeah.
Never mind. I think that I was already negative against you, because I think you had written things in chat, something about how if you came on, you would eviscerate me because I was a horrendously transphobic piece of shit. I think I read your messages like that in chat, so when I brought you on, I was pretty short with you. But I think that's understandably so on my end, that I could probably be short with you when you literally said you've come on to chop my head off.
Sure, if people just show you like the one fucking sentence that had the word decapitate in. I was going back and forth with your stands for quite a while, and they were like, "Well, if you want to talk to Destiny about it, then fucking tell." And I was like, "Sure, go ahead and fucking tell him, and I'll decapitate
Well, sure.
him."
Well, okay. So I'm
Sure.
curious. We can take like
Fine.
1 minute if people are okay. What was the argument you think I was avoiding?
Okay, so the point of having like the trans sports debate like out in public, and how it validates like the opinion of like groups like Fair Play for Women and so on.
What is this
that,
person
like,
talking
this
about
is
with
even,
Mike?
like, a valid
He made an
discussion
actual
to be
wormy
having.
mo.
That like the alarmist rhetoric that they push is that like trans women are destroying women's sport, and by like giving that opinion a platform, you sort of like validate that opinion.
I don't think I
but
gave.
it's not currently a risk.
I think that it's worth having a debate, or I shouldn't say debate, more a conversation on trans people's place in sports. I think that's a legitimate conversation topic to have. And while you're having that topic, I think you get to talk about a whole bunch of issues surrounding trans people that a lot of people aren't aware of. So, for instance, there's a big difference between transitioning pre or post puberty, or the different things that go into transition. You've got hormone replacement therapy, you got sex reassignment surgery. All of these topics are kind of brought up as well. It almost feels like the counterpoint you're saying is that you should
I
literally...
transitioned after puberty, by the way, so like I would like to hear your take on that, because I'm 36 years old and didn't start hormones until 15 months ago.
Okay.
And, and I have lost muscle mass and bone density and all kinds of other things, including all the other stuff like growing breasts and being unable to have children anymore and things like that. Like, I'm going through a second puberty.
Sure, but
I'm
you
basically
gained...
an emotional teenage girl. Like, so
That's...
like I'm kind of curious about your views here on like the trans athlete thing.
So you went through puberty as I don't know how to say this, as a biological male or whatever, right? You went through puberty as that. As a result of going through puberty as that, there are going to be some advantages conferred on you that you've had for your whole life that you aren't undoing until now, and those advantages never truly disappear if you'd been training earlier in life. One of the things.
I mean, that's simply not true. That's not borne out by the data. It's not borne out by the...
You can say that all
I
you
am
want,
hormonally,
but
chemically. Hold on, Destiny, please. 1 second. I am hormonally identical to a 35-year-old natal female in luteal phase, which means I am hormonally identical to a 35-year-old woman who would currently be ovulating, who was born a woman.
Okay.
Like, hormonally, muscle structure, everything. I am literally identical.
This is why... Okay, I'm going to try to say this without being mean, but your takes on this are so incredibly selfish, it blows my mind, okay? One of the reasons why we prescribe puberty blockers is because every trans person acknowledges that there are severe consequences for going through puberty as a sex that you do not identify with. So for you to sit here and say, well, at 35, I can just do hormone replacement therapy, and now it's the exact same thing, is such a slap in the face to every trans person that has to deal with so much extreme dysphoria after going through puberty as a sex they do not identify with. You cannot possibly say that there aren't irrevocable changes that happen to your body when you go through puberty as a sex that you don't identify with. If you do believe that, then why do we talk so much about puberty blockers or the importance of identifying trans people in adolescence? Like,
are those changes an advantage though?
Of course.
Because the things that you're talking about are like fucking like skeletal shape, not bone density.
Bone density is one of them.
I mean, bone density between like trans women and cis women, like there's not a huge difference.
But the difference is that you can train with that bone density. That's the point. That being able to train as a biological male for some number of years before transitioning gives you an unfair advantage that a cis woman
you lose huge amounts of muscle mass after doing transition. A lot of trans women who transition and are in sports lose their position, right? They go down in ranks because like the process of transitioning like makes training that much fucking harder for you because you're not just like maintaining all the fucking muscle mass and shit that you had beforehand. You're fucking actively losing it.
Yeah, but you lose muscle after you quit steroids as well, right? When you cycle on and off, cycling off roids causes a reduction in muscle, but you still got to enjoy
nobody should be taking fucking roids anyway.
We're not talking about whether you should or shouldn't, but the point is that if you have the ability to train for some period of time in like an elevated hormonal state that wouldn't be accessible to a cis woman, then you have an advantage. Now, that's not to say that trans women should be
I
banned
mean,
from
how do you
competing.
know that that's an advantage? I mean, it could just as easily be a disadvantage. The fact that your body changes like irrevocably after having sorry, not irrevocably. It changes so extraordinarily after taking hormones means that one of the major arguments that that sports scientists bring up is that trans women have like less muscle mass but are still carrying around the same skeletal structure, right? Which means that they're actually like at a disadvantage to somebody who is like carrying around less of a skeletal like a lighter skeleton.
So, without getting too down into this rabbit hole, would you be comfortable supporting these arguments if we went down this road and 30 years later there wasn't a single successful trans man in any athletic event?
Of course not.
Okay, because I think that
I
don't see a lot of trans
mean,
men.
obviously, we would reassess down the
Sure,
down the road.
We can point to like a handful of trans women that some of which have been trans women for an incredibly short period of time before breaking world records, and we can also look at the fact that there are very few trans men that seem to be competitive. I can't think of a single one. Maybe you might know one or two.
Right, and but there's significant differences between transitioning from female to male and male to female. That's why we can't really compare the two.
What do you mean by that? They're just hormones. That's what you said, no? Or what's the difference?
Hormones change, but yet this is the thing. You're talking from the perspective of not being trans and not being through the hormone replacement.
Being through the hormone replacement doesn't give you any greater insight into the scientific process as it does any other person.
How does it not? I'm literally fucking trans and transitioning.
Because you're not designing the drugs. You don't understand the hormones that go into your body. You don't understand every single process. This is, of course, absolutely true. Do you think every person that goes through puberty understands the effects that all the hormones have on their body? Just because you've been through a process doesn't make you an expert on all the underlying mechanisms involved in that process.
You an expert on trans people being a cis white guy?
First of all, being white has nothing to do with being trans, so that's a really weird identity politics attack on me. Secondly, I just go by what the studies say and the really basic levels of information I have about human physiology. The idea that you can have elevated bone density for a large portion of your life and train with it is a competitive advantage. The fact that you have a larger lung capacity, the fact you get a larger skeletal structure, these are competitive advantages that most cis women will never have access to.
Are they larger? Are they okay? First off, I agree with you on Lady Rain's take. That's not my position, okay? But is that lung capacity larger than any cis women could possibly have?
No, but on average it will be.
So on average it will be?
Yeah, that's how it works. It's a bimodal distribution of traits between men and women, yeah. Cis men and cis women, I should say. Sorry.
Okay, sure. So there is like a normal range for like all of these fucking attributes, right? And that normal range, like the upper level falls like slightly above for males with like lung capacity and bone density and all that sort of shit, right?
No,
and
the normal ranges are significantly different.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
So wait, the normal ranges are significantly different?
Yes.
No.
That's
not for the matters which pertain to sport.
So this is I get so irritated in these arguments. I'm not trying to be, but this is another problem that you have. When you make these arguments that there aren't significant differences physiologically between men and women, then like what am I supposed to say that all the women that
when I say significant, right? Significant in the range. You know what I mean by the range, right? Like what is possible at the highest level and what is possible at the lowest level, right?
I'm talking about the distribution within those ranges.
I'm not talking about averages. I'm talking about like what is possible within the range.
Oh, sure. But if we talk about what is possible, that hurts you even more. Because if we talk about what is possible, the upper end of what would be a cis male is always going to be greater than the upper end of what would be a cis female. And chances are, if you're transitioning and then competing in athletics, you're going to be at the upper end of that spectrum. So you're always going to have a competitive advantage because you probably came from an upper end of that spectrum anyway.
Which is why we see approximately like a 10% difference between males and females between men and women's sports, right? In terms of like
you can not taking responsibility because you've got people making dumb fuck transphobic takes in your chat and your mods aren't doing shit about it.
I don't know what transphobic takes they're making. I can ban them later, but like you guys are giving like insane. I'm sorry. When I say you guys, as I use as a general for everybody, I don't want to say you people because that sounds really weird. But you two are giving takes that are like far outside of like the range of like reality. So like what you just said, that there's a 10% difference competitively between men and women. I don't know like how you would quantify that.
Okay. Oh God. Averaged out over all sports. There are some sports that women do better than men in fact.
There
very few and far between.
Very few.
But yeah, very few and far between, but they do exist, right? But like as a generality over all sports, and I think this is something that even your chat got like quite fucking confused about, like when we were talking the last time, right? As a generality over all sports, at the very highest level, men will perform about 10% better than women in terms of like men's sports.
I don't
The
know
top
what
athletes
10%
about
better
10%.
means.
It means like 10% faster, right? In fucking race times.
So if we were
for
to look up
example.
like the fastest
It means
sprinters, the best
10%.
weightlifters, it's only going to be a 10% difference in time?
If you average it out across all sports, yeah.
I don't no. I don't even know.
What do you mean no?
How could I average
I
out
can-
across sports like sprint time, number of touchdowns, success in wrestling league? What does that even mean? Average it out across all sports. That sounds like an impossible task.
That means that if, for example, men do like 5% better in swimming, women do like 5% better in running, right? The average between those two would be like no difference. It would be null, right? So like taking it out across all fucking sports, like there's about a 10% difference at the elite level. But as you go down, that difference like all but disappears. Like,
So
and the further you go down,
even if we were to say that, a 10% difference that's a massive difference.
yeah, it is. It is, which is why we don't have men and women racing against each other. And I'm not for the abolition of these categories. But what we don't see is an average of like trans women outperforming cis women by like 10%. We don't see an average of trans women outperforming cis women at all, in fact.
Of course, but there could be other, and we would be foolish not to acknowledge that there are other systemic barriers in place to trans people in sports besides raw physical athletic ability. Trans people face a number of barriers, so we wouldn't expect to see, even if we had a magical like device that said, "Oh, trans women are actually physiologically superior to cis women." Even if that were true, and we did know that, which I'm not saying we do, but even if we did know that, we wouldn't necessarily expect that to trickle down into them winning every athletic event, because it could be that trans people face a number of other barriers, which we know is true, into competing in these events anyway.
Yeah.
So then you can't say the argument we don't see trans people dominating all sports. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously we don't see trans women dominating all sports. We don't see trans women dominating in any sports. And like nearly every single example we bring up when you talk about like trans women breaking world records and all this sort of shit, we find out that actually their performance isn't like particularly exceptional. Like there's no example of this happening where a trans woman is like dominating women's sport and like kicking them out of the competition. Hello, Puff Shake.
I'm back.
Sure.
And so to like the original fucking point, right? Like if we both agree on that, to the original point, to validate the opposing argument that this is something that we should be worried about is to push alarmist rhetoric that is primarily and pretty much only used in pursuit of like oppressing trans people in some fashion. It's usually the oh, we've got trans people this time kind of argument. It's like, well, we lose on the fucking bathrooms issue, we lose on the being able to discriminate in jobs and all that sort of shit, but like I can fucking win people around to being transphobic by pointing out how they're destroying women's sport.
So I'm precisely why I thought you were transphobic, because of seeing the things that I've seen you say in regards to talking about this particular issue.
So I literally can't have this conversation without being transphobic.
I mean, it depends on your definition of transphobic. Like, if you're standing at the opposite position, right, saying, "Oh, there are like significant differences. We really do need to be worried about trans women like destroying women's sport," right? Then no, you can't, because that is a transphobic alarmist narrative. It's just the same, and I brought this up in my fucking in my other in our other conversation. It's just the same as saying we need to be really worried about like the Jews controlling all the banks. Like,
so
it's
I don't
the same
think that
fucking,
I've ever
it's the same
yeah.
thing.
So I don't think I've ever said that trans people are going to destroy sports. I think all I'm arguing is that trans people probably have a competitive advantage in athletic events, which seems like from a basic physiological level seems to be true. I think it's okay to have that conversation without being transphobic. But maybe not for you, I guess.
I mean, I don't know how you can substantiate that particular opinion anyway.
I mean, well, it's hard to. You realize that that's really hard. We don't have a lot of data to
right?
look at.
I mean, what does an advantage mean? What even does fairness mean? What kind of advantages are even acceptable? Why, for example, is it acceptable to exclude trans women from women's sport if we accept that they are women? Surely any advantage that they have at that point should be fucking acceptable, because there are numerous advantages that a woman can have.
Well, we're putting the cart before the horse quite a bit if we were to say that, right? The greater acceptance of trans women as women, period, in all of society is probably going to come a significant amount of time after trans women are accepted into sports. So that's like way before the question. And then secondly, in terms of like what is an advantage, I mean, greater lung capacity, larger skeletal structure, bigger, like more bone density.
Plenty of women have these things. Should we ban them from competing?
How do I have a larger skeletal structure than another 5'8" woman? I don't understand. And like, how is my lung capacity any different than a woman? That's like, feels to me like some god took one rib from one and put it into the other creationist shit.
I mean, this is where we get back to talking about ranges again, right?
I was a medical professional in the United States Navy for 5 years. How are you going to make a claim that lung capacity between men and women is different and actually unironically make that and legitimately believe it's a thing?
So you don't think there's a difference in average O2 capacity between a male and a female as a medical technician or whatever in the Navy? You don't believe that's true?
United States Navy hospital corpsman for 5 years. And no, we never got taught about it. So, entirety of the time that I spent in training, the entirety of the time that I spent at Naval Medical Center Portsmouth, the entirety of the time I spent at Naval Medical Center Great Lakes, none of my instructors ever brought it up. It was never brought up in our independent learning environments.
Okay, well, here's a quick PubMed study that I found in 2 minutes. Don't you think it would be really good to read about this stuff before engaging in these conversations? Don't you think it's really irresponsible that you come off as appearing clueless about it when you're painting me to be the transphobic one? It's really easy to find information about this kind of stuff. Don't you think that it would be better for you to know about this before engaging in these types of conversations?
So you're calling me stupid?
Essentially, yeah.
Okay.
But more than that, like, it's pretty dangerous, right? Like,
you give me one thing on PubMed. Okay.
I mean, we can look up more if you want. I mean, how many different things do you want? I mean, like, it's.
I mean, as an average, trans women.
I was never taught about this.
That's fair enough.
There's 2 more. I mean, we can do this all day.
Probably do have like larger lung capacity than cis women, right? As a group, as an average. Right,
of course.
Which is why when you talk about it like that, though, you're setting trans women as like a class apart, right?
The problem is
they don't exist outside of the normal, outside of the range. So what Lady Rain is saying, like, she's not going to treat like a trans woman and a cis woman differently with regards to, like, I don't know, a fucking lung puncture or something, right? Because chances are that however big that trans woman's lungs are, they could, like, she could come across a cis woman with lungs just as big.
Theoretically, but when we get into elite level athletic competition, physiological and genetic differences are going to start to play a big role in how competitive you can be at the highest levels. Nobody can disagree with this.
So is it cool if I cut in real quick, guys?
Cut in all you want.
I went ahead and came back from my sort of weed session just because I feel like I had something to upper here.
So amazing. Fucking bring the fire.
Just let me know, okay? So I feel like we're kind of missing the point when we talk about gender identities in sports, because I feel like we generally use gender as like a proxy for things that actually matter, right? So we're talking about like physical attributes usually in sports, like maybe speed, maybe your physical, like your muscular power. Why do we not just rank these things and kind of take the gender part of it out? It seems like it's kind of extraneous, you know?
Sure, I agree with that. I think that would be a different way to rank things. I think there's been some people say that we should rank it on the concentration of testosterone in the body. Some people say that once you've been on HRT, I think the Olympic Committee's position is after you've been on HRT after 2 years, they say that it's okay. Other people think that we should use other, but I mean, in some ways, we already do this, right? We've got weight classes for combat sports.
For sure, yeah, for boxing.
Yeah, for sure. You could definitely.
The it's like a more pragmatic conversation to have.
Yeah,
more-
I agree. I definitely
okay.
agree. Yeah, I think that,
Alright.
and this is something I've said a million times. I think that trans people kind of expose a flaw we have in the way that we try to measure the fairness of any type of sport. That male and female isn't a good proxy in and of itself for traits that we think make everything fair. Of course.
Cool, reasonable. So yeah, we don't have to talk about gender in sports anymore. Nice, we did it, guys. That was so fucking easy. Holy shit.
I mean, this implies that we have a problem that we need to fix because of trans people's presence in sport, and I just don't agree that that problem exists. Right? Like the way it works currently is fine. Nobody's getting cheated out of any fucking positions. Trans women are women, so therefore they should have a place in women's sport. Like, there's no reason to think that, like, you know, cis women are going to be at some kind of like severe disadvantage and not be able to compete.
I mean,
And so
it's
there's
hard
no
to
need
say
to
that,
change
but
the fucking thing for that.
when you have
Like, the only-
powerlifters that literally train for a single year in their whole lives and then are shattering like records.
Fucking
for
give me
women.
that. Fucking give me this example. Give me this fucking example right now.
So JC
right?
Cooper was a powerlifter, and she broke a bench press world record in her first competition after training for a single year. Bench press, historically for women, is one of the slowest exercise to build up.
Cooper.
What?
How do you spell JC
Here's
Cooper?
the name. JC Cooper. Let me type it in. JC Cooper.
Where
You had
typing that?
another lady called Mary Gregory who broke 4 world records in all 3 competed lifts, as well as breaking the total for squat, bench, and deadlift. I can give you her name as well. And then you have another person named Laurel Hubbard. This was somebody who, before transitioning, they didn't mean anything in terms of like weightlifting, and then after transitioning, was like the 3rd best in the world within 1 year of competition. Now what I'm doing right now is kind of gish galloping because I know that you haven't read on all of these people, but this is a really hard area.
I've read up on Laurel Hubbard.
Okay,
so-
this is a really hard area to get data on, okay? Because there's just not a lot of trans people that compete like at the highest levels. But like for the data that we do have and for the basic physiological understandings we have, this is probably something that we should think about.
So the idea that like Hubbard climbed to like what was the 3rd best in the world? You said.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. So she lifted in the over 40s category and was 33rd. Like.
That's what I mean. It's cherry picking.
That's all we can do is
things.
cherry pick, of course. There's not that many
Well, yeah,
trans
of course,
people.
of course,
We
we're
only-
gonna, of course, we're going to cherry pick examples. But when we
Oh,
cherry pick examples, like nearly all the time, right? They're not like fucking exceptional.
Wait,
when we look into like fucking Fallon Fox,
You
for
can
example,
look at her
like, she's
being
not
3rd,
fucking.
but then you refuse to look at her being like in the 30th on the other spectrum. Like,
Well,
it's-
so the problem I have with like cherry picking in this is I don't know how many, but I don't feel like there's a lot of examples to go
Yeah,
off
of course. So we have to cherry pick. We have to basically do case studies. Yeah, of course. Which sucks. I agree. It's not the best way to conduct this type of like observation, for sure.
But
Yeah.
I mean, we're skipping over the fact that like relatively like you're wrong about the details of the Hubbard case, for example.
Wait, what was I wrong about the
You
details
left
of the
out-
Hubbard case?
You left out the fact for one, right? She's like competing in the over 40s category.
Who
Right?
so?
What do you mean?
what do you
who's
mean
so?
so?
What does that have to do with the fact that
Like-
so they are competing in the over 40s category? Is it nobody lists in that category, or
There's not that many people listed in that category. No.
why weren't they worldwide ranked when they were a male competing?
And for her to make it, and for her to like break any record isn't actually that uncommon. People break records in weightlifting all the fucking time. Like most weightlifters have several world records like breaks in their career.
This trans woman
Like,
was
this is
not.
unusual.
This trans woman wasn't even anything on the national level before transitioning, and then within 1 year of competing as a woman, started to break some records. Maybe it was in the over 40 category, I guess. So we can say there aren't many competitors there.
Yeah. So she moved from like the under 40 category to the over 40 category where the competition is like much slimmer, and her rank increased.
Okay.
And there are several like, and there's a couple of like longitudinal studies of like cyclists and runners, for example, that show that like trans women who compete who are in like the bottom 25th percentile before end up in the bottom 25th percentile after transition.
Yeah,
There's-
I understand.
there's,
So
like
Sure.
And when you're cherry picking like individual examples, there's so many, and normally we find out that they're not really that exceptional. Fucking Dr. Rachel McKinnon, for example, like she comes first in the World Cycling Championship, everybody goes fucking apeshit. The woman who complained about her winning, right? Winning that one fucking race that won her the fucking championship, had competed against her 12 times before and won every single fucking time. Just the one time she lost, it becomes a big fucking issue.
So I'm super curious, and I'm just curious, and maybe you don't, and this isn't supposed to be a gotcha. Do either of you know a single successful trans man that's competed in an elite level athletic event?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Not without having to look it up.
We don't really have this conversation about trans men because
Why?
it's the trans women that there's.
Because trans women are the
trans
problem,
women
not
that are the
trans
scary
men.
ones.
So do you ever
According
think
to
that
the
like
right wing trans women are the problem, not trans men?
So do you ever think
Because
that
it's-
trans men, by being forced to compete with cis men, are just permanently fucked out of like being competitive at elite athletic
No,
levels?
I don't believe that for a second.
Okay.
I'd personally have to look into it a bit more. I'm not
Vivian,
sure.
Leon wants to get a word in.
Yeah, sorry. I wanted to ask if anybody here like knows the case of Caster Semenya from South Africa.
Yeah, of course.
No.
Yeah, right. Yeah, she's like an Olympic runner there, got really good results. And a lot of people had curiosities because of some masculine features. They did some blood tests, found out she is biologically female, but she has some, I don't want to say weird, but there's something with her genetics that gives her really high levels of testosterone.
Yeah, so Caster Semenya would be considered intersex. She has XXY chromosomes, but for all like phenotypical purposes, she presents as like a female.
Turns out
Right.
a lot of women runners are intersex. I
Sure,
heard.
that's okay.
Yeah. And they ended up deciding, like the committee, that because she had such high levels of testosterone, she has to actually take drugs to lower that.
And whenever I talk about this on my stream, like usually I say like I'm not gonna have the fucking like trans sports debate because like I believe that bringing it up is like validating the narrative of hate groups and shit. But I would be willing to have a conversation about like how we should restructure sports in order to be more accommodating of like non-binary and intersex people, because I feel like they are the people who get really fucking screwed by these rules. It's not that like sports is being destroyed for women, it's that like we're placing like unnecessary restrictions on like non-binary and intersex people. So
And I don't disagree with that at all.
It should be about being more inclusive and not like whether we should exclude a certain group.
Sure, and I don't disagree with that at all. My two big problems are that one, you do a disservice to the argument by saying stuff that's just blatantly not true, and then
Well, pick something. What have I said that's blatantly untrue?
I think for the most part, I don't think you've said anything that's is bad on the level as like Lady Rain, but like stuff that's just blatantly not true.
Why wasn't I ever taught about it as a medical professional? Why was it never brought up?
Maybe you went to a bad school. Maybe the Navy doesn't care about the difference in lung capacity between men or women. I don't know. I can't
Because
answer
there's no
for your
legitimate
level.
fucking reason to care about it.
You don't think there's a reason?
How does it affect the care if someone has any sort of thoracic injury whatsoever? If we're talking about a gunshot
Competing in
wound
athletic
death or
events isn't
anything
about
else.
treating emergency care.
Probably the same reason. So if you're gonna call me a fucking liar to my face and stupid, maybe also understand the fact that when I made that statement, I didn't know any of this existed because I had not been taught about it. Now, if you want to also go like maybe to the next step and some of your people in chat and maybe call me stolen valor, we can go there too. And I can give you all the
I don't think you said you're a
information.
liar.
So,
You're
wait,
just
hold on. I don't need
is what
mind
it-
waves, chill. Okay, firstly, I never called you a liar, okay? I just called you stupid. Firstly.
Okay.
Secondly, I haven't sent anybody after you. Thirdly, you attacked me for being white in a conversation about trans people, which is incredibly fucking weird, okay?
Yeah,
and
that's
fourthly,
just that white guy, sorry.
And fourthly, my overall issue with this is that I think you do a disservice to the trans community in two ways. One, everybody can see how horrible these arguments are, and two, it's really incredibly upsetting to me when, as somebody that's followed ContraPoints, for instance, I personally know, well, I don't want to say I personally, that's kind of weird, but I know that trans people deal with a lot of gender dysphoria after having gone through puberty as the wrong sex. So for people with an agenda to sit on a program and try to pretend that that's not real, or to say that their experiences
said
are
that
fake,
wasn't
you
fucking
are. You're
real.
saying who cares what you go through puberty? You can undo all of that with HRT. That's not
That is
true.
not what I said. I said it's
Really?
not done for me.
My position
Wait,
either.
then why
Like,
would you use yourself if you know that's not the norm? Why would you just use yourself as a personal case study if you weren't trying to make a
Because
broader
every
argument?
other one of my trans friends who has gone through HRT in their 20s and 30s is also after at least a year hormonally identical to a natal female.
Being hormonally identical, hormones are not the only thing that determine your gender expression, that determine how you're treated in society, that determine your athletic ability. There's more to a body than hormones. And every trans person that's had to suffer through the dysphoria of going through puberty as the wrong sex knows that. Just taking HRT is not enough for a lot of people. They don't like the way their faces look. They don't... What?
So I'm fake trans now, too.
I didn't say you're fake trans. I just say that you kind of shit all over the community when you put up a bunch of bad arguments and you deny they're going through puberty experience. It's a really shitty thing to do to try to get
I didn't deny they were going through puberty.
You literally are saying, well, me and all of my friends, we all took HRT and now we're perfectly the same as all the cis women. A lot of trans people that transition after puberty have a lot of problems that do not match your lived experience. And it's a huge slap in the face to them to pretend that they should.
Can I say something quickly? I just want to say a couple of things. Okay. So just like my overall position, right? I think that since this is like kind of such a new topic and we're still learning new things about like trans people all the time because it's been kind of like a taboo subject that's been looked down upon, it's very hard for me to hold like a firm stance just because every time I look at data, it seems like I learned something new or something that contradicts the past thoughts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I have like not a super duper firm stance just because of my personal lack of data. Now, second of all, in regards to the thing about hormone blockers, even if like theoretically speaking, your whole like puberty thing can like be undone or you go through a second puberty, there's still good arguments for hormone blockers, even if theoretically you can undo your past experience. And I just want to bring that up because the fact is that, you know, even if your physical like things come undone and you like don't have to go through like dysphoria anymore because of that, your dysphoria can still like, at least from what I know, you can correct me if I'm wrong, your dysphoria can still manifest in ways of like how you're kind of like taught and like raised for such a long time, right?
Yeah, that's not what I'm talking about though. Like a lot of trans people that go through puberty, especially trans women that go through puberty as men, can get very masculine presenting features that they just can't undo with HRT. That causes a ton of dysphoria without much more expensive surgery later in life. And then I would point to like ContraPoints talking about like, you know, cranial facial surgery or whatever to have to undo some of these things. That it is a really huge issue that a lot of trans people.
I'm also of the opinion that I will never pass because of the fact that I went through puberty as a male.
Right, so I mean, you kind of understand like where Destiny is coming from on that point, right?
Yes.
Like that there are some things that like that change about you during a masculinizing puberty.
What I'm trying to say is that those things, now that I have been on hormones for the period of time that I have been on them, have started to revert and to regress, and I have started to see significant changes, especially in my mental and emotional states.
Yeah, right. I mean, I'm not trying to come hard, you know. I always say like every trans person is like my sibling, and I care about your well-being and all that sort of shit. But I can't like fully back you up on some of these takes because like they're not great.
Okay, they're not great then.
I don't want to.
Okay.
You know,
Right.
It's there are like general differences that change, but I also kind of see what you're saying and what Pixie is saying, and it comes back to some of the things about that I was saying about ranges as well. A lot of the reasons that like trans women are upset with these masculinizing changes that we go through during puberty, right, is not because they fall outside of the range of what is possible for a cis female. It's because they fall outside of the range of what society in general sees appropriate for a cis female in isolation sometimes and in aggregate a lot of the time. So it doesn't necessarily stand to reason that just because you go through a masculinizing puberty, you acquire traits that no cis woman could ever have.
There's just something I was wondering, like earlier, I forgot who said it or where it was stated. Somebody said something about not being in favor for abolishing the categories of like male and woman. And I don't know, like personally, I do. Okay, this is gonna sound like a really weird argument, and you might completely like attack me for it because maybe I'm just wrong. But I've recently been reading a lot of studies about implicit bias and like unconscious bias and how that can affect us when it comes to like our results, right? So I think there's like definitely like an objective standard here. Like guys are more like usually like stronger than women and stuff like that. But I wonder in certain sports if like this implicit bias that you have like from such a young age that it's like, oh, you know, it's okay if you never perform to like, I guess like the standard a guy does because you're a woman. Like I guess like subconsciously affects like some sport performances. And I know it sounds like a really weird argument, and I don't think it's like true for everything. But I just remember reading stories about women who like outpitched I'm really bad with like sports names, but like famous like sports people like I think Tom Brady. I don't know. No, that's the wrong word. I'll find it later.
Not that guy.
Not that guy. But I can find it later. But I was just wondering what your takes were on that in general.
Are you talking about my argument that I made earlier?
No, I don't know. I came here like
Okay,
kind
so
of
like
blind.
differences in our expectations of how people perform in society can take a small biological difference and exaggerate it to a massive like environmental one. So for instance, we can say that men might be like say 1% better at math than women. Let's just say we know that's a biological fact. If we notice that in society, that might end up resulting in like 80% of mathematicians being men versus 20% being women, even though the difference like purely biologically is very small. So I mean, I would expect that same thing to probably carry over to athletic events as well, that maybe women don't do as much physical training early on, and that might dissuade some of them from being as competitive as they could be in athletic events. That's possible.
I don't know. It works across the whole of society, but when we're talking about sports, we're talking about such a small subset of society.
Mhm.
And when we're talking about trans people in sports, we're talking about like fucking nothing,
Yeah.
basically 0.0001% of the population, right? Like this isn't going to make like the 1% difference isn't going to make a huge difference at all. Not in terms of like who's going to be able to compete and like whether you're going to like have all trans women on the podium at some point.
Oh no, but what I'm arguing for is that if you want women in general, whether it be like I guess like even just trans women or just cis women in general to perform better, then perhaps the elimination of these categories and focusing more on like ranks, what you guys were talking about,
There you go.
like weight and stuff like that, would improve overall performance for everybody involved.
But I mean,
Absolutely,
this still like presupposes the existence of a problem, right? And I don't believe that that problem exists, and I haven't
No,
seen
it's just about getting the gender category out of the determination process. I mean,
Yeah,
that's like the
I
goal.
would say the problem exists, but not because of trans people, but just how we view gender in general, right?
Right,
How kind
that's
of like
the whole
from
framing of this conversation is like trans women could be outperforming women in sports. So, like, what should we do about that? If you were to give me that exact same answer, that exact same proposal to say, what Leon brought up about Caster Semenya, right? How can we be more inclusive to like non-binary and intersex people? Well, maybe we could stratify it in terms of like weight or whatever, like we do in boxing,
Yeah,
like
for sure.
sports.
Yeah.
Like, if you were to give me that answer to that question, I'd be fine with it. I'd be like, yeah, no, that sounds like a reasonable
Wait,
assumption.
so
My objection
why is it more legitimate here and less legitimate in the other case?
well because
I'm confused.
because when we're having the conversation about trans women in sport, you're attempting to solve that problem by changing the way that sport works.
Well,
And if
sure,
you
because
and
I'm a gender
about-
abolitionist, right? That's like what I care about is removing gender category from things that, you know, use it arbitrarily.
I mean, if you did just remove gender category, I mean, that would also be another reason to like remove gender categories from sport, right? But like I've said from the start, like my whole objection to this is always like the framing of the argument as like women are at risk of being pushed out of sport by trans women, and like I don't believe that that's the case. I don't think that the evidence shows that there is any risk of that happening anytime in the near future.
Yeah,
Or
this is
probably
true. That's true.
And
This is a totally separate conversation, though. But
yeah. Well, just let me finish. And so, like, if you're going to propose that if you're going to try and propose a solution to this non-existent problem, you're suggesting that the problem exists. You see?
yeah, but nobody.
I
I don't
will-
think anybody comes out with a take
Yeah.
like this is a huge problem. I don't think I've ever said that. That I feel like trans women are going to push out all women from sports. That's not usually. Usually the thing is just like, is it fair to have trans women competing with women? Which I think is an interesting conversation because we get to talk about a lot of stuff related to trans things.
I mean, for you, it's an interesting conversation. For like the people who have to like deal with the shit on a fucking daily basis, it's the narrative that is used to push hate groups' agendas. You know?
How do you think you're ever going to get acceptance of trans people? You literally can't even talk about like trans people.
Of
Like,
course,
do you think?
talk about trans people, but you can do it without saying, "Hey, do you know what? Like, maybe some of these hate groups have a point. They don't have a point. Like, it might be an intellectually interesting discussion to have, but really, like, the conclusion is there's no fucking danger of this happening. So there's no reason to present an argument as if it is."
Okay, I guess that's just where we disagree. I guess like at the end of the day, like it feels like rhetoric and optics is like the most important thing, but like that's it. But anything like outside of what you consider to be like the most rhetorically pure strategy is literally transphobia, which I don't know. I think that's kind of crazy to me. I don't think that I have a transphobic community. I think I have what?
I mean, that's not what I said at all.
I mean, that's essentially what you're saying. That like, if I were to have a discussion on like, well, do I think that trans women could compete with cis women? Would that be like a physiologically fair category? That I'm necessarily embracing transphobic arguments.
Do you think we should have a conversation about like whether the Jews could like take over the world and like what we should potentially do to stop it?
I mean, if that was something that was like actively happening, sure.
No, it's not something that's actively happening. Just like trans women are not pushing women out of sport, right? Like, so do you?
I mean, like, we can have conversations on whether or not Jews are like enacting like subtle plots to like. We can talk about that. I guess it doesn't seem like there's very much evidence for that.
I don't feel like that's a fucking responsible conversation to have.
Yeah, and I generally agree. Sure,
for an intellectual exercise, like, and you agree that would be validating the opinions of like fucking vile people.
I think that it's possible to have a responsible conversation about trans people and their place in like an athletic environment without necessarily embracing or empowering like transphobic ideas. I think that's possible.
I mean, I suppose at this point, like what I would clearly want you to say, basically, is that there is no danger of like cis women being forced out of sport by trans women.
I literally said that word for word earlier. I'll say it again. I don't think there's a realistic possibility that this legion of evil trans women are going to come and bully all the cis women out of their sports.
I mean, you don't need to hyperbolize it.
Well, it's the ridiculous caricature that conservatives make of trans people. But sure, of course, I obviously don't embrace that. But I don't think anybody in my audience thinks I do. The only people who ever get that idea of me are when people like you two watch my stuff and then you go out and you say that I say that. That's the only time.
I don't know why. I don't know why you're saying people like you two, because I haven't gone out and said that you've said that, right?
I mean, we could dig up the logs of what you were saying about how transphobic I was being. I could do that if you want. We could run.
I said that you're pushing a transphobic narrative.
Sure,
I've not fucking changed on that.
Sure,
Destiny.
but nobody in my audience that's listening to that, and I don't think many people in a broader audience listen, are going to think that until you try to make that the narrative.
4,000 fucking member audience, frankly. I don't think you can like as a responsible streamer, I don't think you would be doing your due diligence by saying, "Hey, nobody in my chat is going to take away from this that like trans women could be like forcing women out of sport." Like, especially not where we came in the first fucking instance, like when I was talking to you just after Alabel, because you were standing pretty fucking hard, right? And you even said in our fucking discussion, I might be remembering wrong, but I'm pretty fucking sure you said that it could become a problem in the future, and therefore that's why we should talk about it.
I don't know if that's what I said, but I mean, I guess it could become a problem in the future, sure. But it's still something that's worth talking about. Like, we have enough like scientific evidence to talk about like.
You said that you think it's not going to become a problem in the future.
I don't know. I don't think that right now there's a legion of trans women that are coming to take over cis sports. If we go down this road, it's possible in the future there could be. It's possible that right now there's not a single trans man that can compete in any part of any athletic event ever.
I don't know why you're bringing it back to like trans men. I completely
because you're only focused on the one end of this conversation that suits your narrative, and you're willing to toss an entire group of trans people under the bus because they don't, right?
That's entirely fucking unfair. Like I've said multiple fucking times, like I'm okay with having discussions about like how we can be more inclusive. If you think that like trans men are like missing out in addition to like intersex and non-binary people, we can talk about how maybe we should restructure things in order to like make it more inclusive for them. Like that's a complete mischaracterization of my argument and something that I have stated multiple fucking times.
What would that league look like then? There'd be cis women, and trans men would just all compete in the same category?
I mean, if we're doing like weight categories or something, sure.
We're not doing weight categories, obviously.
Well, I don't know what you're proposing.
The problem is that I feel like none of you care about this discussion. You just have like a particular narrative you want to push, and you're willing to throw anybody you can under the bus as long as you can remain like ideologically pure enough to push it. Like that's my problem. That's why I don't like these discussions at the end of the day. What?
Who am I throwing under the bus?
You don't give a fuck about trans men. Why talk about trans athletes at all then?
Well, what the fuck did I just say?
That you'd be willing to revisit it at a future point in time if it ever became, I guess, convenient for you to ever think about it?
No, I said that if you want to have a conversation, right, about how we can be more inclusive, and if you think that trans men are at a significant disadvantage, that's something that I'd have to look into, right?
You don't think it's a little telling that we've spent all this time talking about trans women and restructuring categories, but we don't know a single thing about trans men?
That's the fucking conversation, Destiny. That's the fucking conversation that constantly gets put.
Okay.
Of course we know more about trans women in cis women's sport because that's all anybody ever fucking talks about. They don't bring up like the young fucking wrestler that was like forced to compete against women because like he was a trans man, right? And he fucking like smashed the shit out of them.
Wasn't that a high schooler?
Yeah, it was a high schooler.
Sure.
But like that's an instance in which like people were put at a severe disadvantage. Somebody's fucking like personal dignity was horribly fucking violated, and someone was forced to fucking compete against people when they clearly did have an unfair advantage when they were doing what would be considered doping if they were a cis woman. So like there are other conversations we can have, and like I said from the very start, my only fucking objection has been the framing of the fucking conversation.
Sure.
Right?
And if your perception of the framing is we need to talk about this right now because trans women are ruining sports, then I agree that that's a pretty shitty framing, and I try pretty hard to steer away from that. I just don't like the idea that like I don't know. I think I've said. I think.
Why do you say so much? Why do you say so much about how how trans, like how men have like all these advantages over women, and how like
because that is part of a broader view that I have on the world that informs other very important points that I have. So, for instance, I'm sorry, real quick.
All you're talking about.
No, because I try to make sure that my points are consistent from argument to argument to argument to arguments. That I have a comprehensive view of the world. When somebody comes on and they say like, oh, well, there's not much a difference between like men and women physiologically. Well, what the fuck am I supposed to say when people complain about like rape culture or the threat that women feel when they'd have to deal with men that can physically overpower them in almost every part of like a relationship? Well, what's wrong with you, woman? Like, you guys should be stronger on average, like, or as strong as a man on average. Like, why are you complaining? Like, this isn't even a real difference in strength.
Nobody's even said that they're as strong.
Alabrel did, and that was the argument that you came off the back of, and Lady Rain was approaching that when it seemed like she didn't want to acknowledge that there are very real differences post-puberty between men and women.
And in our conversation, in our previous conversation, and in this conversation, I have stated that like
you have.
I don't agree with
that.
Alabrel.
I want to be super clear. That's true.
Lady Rain's takes either, some of them. Okay,
that's
so
fine.
At least take me as my own fucking.
I do, but then I have to. Sure.
A lot coming at you, and you might have to like remember what individual people have said, right?
Sure.
But, like,
and I agree with that, and that's great.
Other people's opinions.
That's fine, and I can remember your individual opinion, but then you can't come at me and say that all transphobic people use this argument and you also use it. You have to take mine as individual opinion as well. It's not fair that I have to treat you as an individual, but you get to generalize me as a class of transphobes.
I'm not generalizing you as a class of transphobes. I'm saying my position from the start has also been, right, that you're like a person who doesn't, or at least at the start of this conversation, right, didn't really know much about this and wanted to explore it and was unwittingly pushing transphobic narratives, right?
I don't. Okay, that could be your opinion, but I don't agree that I've ever done that. I think I've spent a great deal of time like researching trans issues before I've had these conversations about like trans athletes. So I would say that I have, but I don't want to make this whole. You can get the last word. I don't want this whole thing like about trans athletes. I didn't mean to revisit that entire argument.
Oh fuck. I mean, there's not really much to say on the issue except that, you know, I mean, I'm glad we at least both agree that like this isn't an issue, and that if we're going to have a conversation about trans people in sport, and this is why I say that I get kind of upset when you say I'm like throwing people under the bus, because the thing that I repeatedly fucking say is that if we're going to have a conversation about how to like change the structure of sport, we should be doing it from an angle of being more inclusive to trans men, fucking non-binary people, and intersex people. Like, that's the conversation we should be having, and that's something that I've said fucking repeatedly.
Sure.
Not about like whether fucking trans women are like pushing cis women out of sport.
Sure, I don't disagree
So,
with that.
I suppose thank you for your time and Sorry for fucking rattling off so much and over talking you every now and again. I get passionate about this shit.
Lady, do you have anything else to add there on that? No? Okay, so can we agree on one thing? That we didn't use any slimy debate tactics. We didn't do any gish galloping. We weren't arguing in bad faith.
Hey, it's the least slimy roundtable on Twitch, baby. You're just now finding out.
Okay.
There is that.
All right. So the dumb and I mean,
and instead of just saying, "Hey, I don't know if you knew this or didn't know this, but hey, this is a thing that you should probably look at," you're just going to call me, you're just going to insult me and call me stupid and dumb.
Okay,
so
when you come out and you literally drop the cis white male shit on me, I lost so much respect for you, like right out.
And you really need to stop making an appeal to like your lack of education. I have an equal lack of education, and like it's really cringy. Like I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Whatever.
Okay.
Like, well, like, hold on. I get held to account every single day for every single word that I've ever said on any single platform I've ever been on. Like, I think it's fair for me to hold you to account for some of the things that you said while you're part of the group of people that is actively trying to destroy my reputation across these platforms. Like, I've spent a great deal of time talking about issues related to sex, race, trans people, LGBT issues, broader economic ones, and I constantly have to deal with like a wave of people that are similar to you that don't seem to know much at all about a lot of stuff that will just give insanely irresponsible takes while trying to be insanely critical of me because I might have misspoke once or because I might come off as an asshole. That is incredibly frustrating for me to deal with.
Get a word in since you and Vivian have been talking to say that my original thought process of you over this conversation has started to change and that I might have been wrong and inaccurate.
I mean, wait, hold on. I have to just say, you realize that you've had to make the same statement literally 3 times this day. Once about me first, and then second about Irrelevant, and now about Destiny. It's almost like you have all of these opinions about everybody that you don't like for no good, valid reason. And then once you actually talk to them, you realize that you don't know anything about these people.
Okay, it's probably
cool. You got me. Happy Mindwaves? Straight got me. Got him.
I'm just saying, no, you keep apologizing, but it doesn't mean anything when you keep engaging in the same behavior time after time and after time, right? Like,
well, maybe
what good is your apology?
Maybe this can be like a minor learning experience, right? There's probably no need to like rub it in because, like, in fairness, all these mistakes were made before the initial apology, right? And like,
I mean, we could say that, but like she apologized to me about the way that she initially treated me, and then continued to make jabs at me when addressing Irrelevant. Like, what the fuck? How am I supposed to feel about that?
I don't. To be clear, I don't care about like apologies or anything. I just wish like in the future that like people would go by more than just like a 1 or 2 second clip to try to like it feels like at the end of the day like this is all about like people in clubs who don't actually care about like any of these issues. And like I get that feeling a lot. And people get mad at me for quote unquote attacking the left. But I get and even Mindwaves, you've even called me out on this. Sometimes I feel like it feels like people just want to be more of a club than like actually caring about issues on the left. That like shitting on billionaires is more important than actually helping poor people, or like decommodifying housing is more important than like getting houses to people that need it, or abolishing private healthcare and making Medicare for all is more important than actually getting universal healthcare. Like it just feels like a club at the end of the day that everybody wants to be a part of. And
even the characterization of the left, like this may be like some of the people that you've interacted with, and
this is almost every person I've interacted with. To be clear,
when you're interacting like through fucking Twitch and Twitter and shit, and you're getting all the snappy fucking memes and stuff. It's gonna seem like that's like the overwhelming amount of rhetoric, but
to be clear, I'm sorry, to be crystal clear on that, I don't think that most people are like this. I think that most content creators are like this. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Fine. Yeah. No.
And Mindwaves, did you ever stop to think that I had the view of you and Irrelevant and Destiny because I thought, like I said, that all 3 of you were from you and Irrelevant were from Destiny's community and orbited him and agreed with good 90% of everything that he has to say, and that yes, I have been proven wrong
hilarious
multiple times.
You're again bringing up assumptions. Like, do you still think these assumptions about me are valid, or like are these your previous assumptions? No, okay.
She's saying that it's not right. Like, it's an honest attempt at contrition.
I don't want to
like I said, I really don't care about apologies. I would just like to see consistent behavior going forward, right? Like that's the only thing that matters. But whatever.
The one thing that I fucking wanted to get out through all of this though, right, is I don't want you to let Destiny completely off the fucking hook because he definitely says some fucking dumbass shitty things about leftists, right?
Like what?
says shit like Bernie bros are basically fucking tankies, right? Like this kind of like generalization and characterization of like the whole leftist being fucking tankies and shit, and saying shit about using USSR iconography basically makes you a fucking like authoritarian leftist. Like there's a lot of fucking dumb takes that he has, so I'm not gonna fucking let him off the hook completely.
Sure.
Right?
So let's go through both of these. So firstly, if you were to go into my subreddit, my chat, or my Discord at any point in time and ask somebody, like, what does Destiny think about lefties or Bernie bros or whatever, I think I've said a million times, I don't think that all Bernie bros are like the Bernie bros on Twitter. That on Twitter, the 99% white, affluent, male, like cis, like demographic does not represent the broader coalition of Bernie supporters.
Bros on Twitter are fucking are tankies?
That do I think all what on Twitter are tankies?
All the Bernie bros on Twitter are tankies.
No, of course not.
I will say that, like, while you do address this sometimes, oftentimes the way that you characterize socialists in general, when you talk about lefties, or not just socialists, like lefties in general, it does come off as like
it does,
like,
and I agree with that, and that's one of the reasons why I want to stop talking to lefties, because the conversations are fucking horrible. But like, I'm sorry guys, I have talked to so many of you spineless motherfuckers that will sit here and say like, oh, I don't support any of that, I don't know what the USSR is, I don't know what the red shit is, blah 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 blah. And then you know what, I get that, who's that Michael, who's that fucking puppet of like the Russia Today media? I debated that guy, and that dude's all over fucking Twitter, slurping all over fucking Putin, all over fucking North Korea, or I'll show up in subreddits and we're defending fucking China, saying, you know, like, fuck the Hong Kongers, bullshit, like, that's just Western imperialism. Or I look at all these, I look at Central Committee, I look at Hassan, like, all these people with all these fucking, the hammer and sickle, the red flag, the text, like, oh, well, I don't know where that came from. Like, at the very least...
I don't think just because you have the fucking, like, hammer and sickle, the hammer and sickle is, like, the universal symbol of socialism. Just because it was used by the fucking USSR doesn't mean that it's, like, inherently fucking supporting tank.
I just want to, I'm super curious. When I link this stream, when you go to Central Committee's page, you don't think any of this is supposed to be evocative of the USSR at all?
Of course it is.
Okay, so then we agree on that. When I look at somebody like Hassan Piker, who has a show called Agitprop, who's got a red...
The USSR was entirely made up of fucking, like, tankies? Do you think that, like...
Wait, hold on. Wait, I'm sorry. Do you think that, like, Nazi Germany was, like, historically made up of fascists? Or... What kind of a question is that? Yeah, hold on. Yes. Marxist-Leninism, ML, like, by definition, those are tankies, and that was the ideology of the USSR.
By definition, Marxist-Leninists are tankies.
Yes.
I mean, you got a lot to learn.
Can you tell me what I'm wrong about that, please? What do you think? Wait, hold on, wait, I'm curious. What do you think a Marxist-Leninist is?
A Marxist-Leninist is somebody who believes in a vanguard state prior to like moving on to the communes and shit. Yeah.
Okay, and what is Marxism-Leninism most closely associated with?
Marx and Lenin.
Okay, what were the main states that used ML, okay, as like the ideology to have a vanguard party?
That would be fucking USSR, China, and...
Yes. When people say that they're Marxist-Leninists, they're generally most closely associated with tankies. Like... How are you going to say that somebody supporting the USSR isn't a tanky? What?
I'm not arguing that somebody supporting the USSR isn't a tanky. I'm saying that one, like the hammer and sickle isn't inherently.
I'm not just talking about the hammer and sickle,
right? And two, that there are you can argue for like fucking Marxist-Leninism without saying like I support exactly the way that the USSR, the DPRK, and China went. But I'm not gonna lie, I'm not fucking like educated enough to be arguing this fucking point too much. So I don't want to go hard on it. But
okay.
I just think that these characterizations and generalities, right? Like a lot of people.
Wait, hold on. Firstly, okay, so Marxism-Leninism was literally developed under Stalin, okay, and the USSR, defending the USSR literally makes you a tanky. So when you tell me. Somebody's like, oh, I'm a Marxist-Leninist, and then I link you to something like Central Committee's page, or Hassan Piker's, like, all of his all of his iconography. Don't you think it's pretty easy for me to be like, this guy's pretty chill with tankies, if I don't call him one? You think that's really a huge leap of faith to me? I feel like I'm arguing with crypto-fascists all over again. This is insane to me.
I mean, there's definitely a split in the left between like the fucking tankies and everybody else, right? Like, generally, people on the left will be like, "No, fuck tankies."
But
Right?
if I flirted this much with Nazism, look what happens to PewDiePie, and I don't even think PewDiePie's a crypto fascist. I think he's stupid.
I mean, yeah, I feel like you're missing the nuance of like saying like the USSR had some fucking good ideas. Marxist-Leninism doesn't have to become like a fucking despotic dictatorship.
Do you think that Hitler might have had a few good ideas, at least a couple?
Sure.
Okay, so then if somebody like flirted with a bunch of Nazi iconography or whatever, and they're like, okay, well, chill. I know I got the Iron Cross, I know I got the swastika, but like there were a couple things like that I think that Hitler got right.
Fucking symbol of like Marxism, Leninism, right? It's the symbol of socialism in general.
Okay, I feel like I'm arguing with crypto fascists.
There are socially. I
like,
know that
these channels.
like,
no,
you've got like this misconception.
You
like the Socialist Party of the UK uses fucking hammer and sickle in their fucking iconography, and they're like avowed libertarian socialists. Like, not everybody who uses the fucking hammer and sickle is like.
Why do you keep saying
like tanky fucking?
Why do you keep saying just the hammer and sickle?
Because you're the one that brought up iconography.
Yeah, I mean...
Iconography has more to do with just the hammer and sickle. It could be the color schemes. It could be the type of text. It could be the types of symbols you use, like the convenient California one that like resembles like other USSR iconography. Like, it's not just the hammer and sickle.
Pretty much every fucking socialist organization across the fucking world has used like the hammer and sickle fucking red backgrounds. Like... It's just because
okay,
like...
You know what? I don't know. So if I look up Socialist Party of the UK and I go to images... I don't even see a hammer and sickle with these guys. Not to say that none of them... Oh, here's a random thing. Not to say that, like, none of these people, like, use hammer and sickles, but I'm just saying, like, that's just one part of it, right? If you go to Central Committee's page... His name is Central Committee. Like, I feel like you're gaslighting me. This page is very clearly evocative of the USSR.
I don't give a fuck about the general example. I was talking about your talks about the iconography in general, right? I don't care about like fucking Mike from PA.
I understand. Okay, but then what about Hassan Piker, who has a show called Agitprop, who has like iconography of him with like the things in the background and says a lot of like weird statements like Stalin was better than Nixon. And
people talk about Agitprop all the time who have fuck all to do with tankyism. Like, I feel like you're discounting like a shitload of stuff that socialists use. Right? You're seeing a socialist say a word like agitprop, and you're going fucking tanky. Maybe I'm wrong.
Can I ask a question?
Like he and I could like work some things out.
I think
like, isn't that why Destiny came on? So like, I could tell him what my problems were. He could respond to those.
Oh God, let's make it all about you again.
My words, bro.
Pixie had a question, right? Pixie hasn't said anything in a while.
Yeah. So just I'm gonna state my point and then ask the questions. So for me, the whole like hammer and sickle thing has become like just a meme, right? Like, oh, our memes, whenever like that thing comes up. A lot of people I see, like, I guess here, let me ask like two general questions and then go back in. What do you guys think of when somebody says hammer and sickle?
USSR?
Okay. You see, I just think communism. However, when I see like the Nazi symbol, I think Nazism, right? And I guess like the reason why I guess this isn't really a question now, it's a tangent, but whatever. The reason why I'm stating this is because the hammer and sickle, I feel like for a lot of people, it represents like communism, which although it's not an ideology I personally agree with or think is like, I guess like plausible. It's not an ideology inherently based on like genocide. While like, swastika, like Nazism is kind of like almost inherently like based on.
Hold on. Can I ask you a question? If you think we polled if we polled the average American, do you think that do you think that most Americans wouldn't associate the hammer and sickle with the USSR? Do you think that most of them would just say generally it's just communism?
But that's just an argument that socialists and communists are doing bad branding, right? Like,
well, but it doesn't matter. Like it's still relevant that you could use it then to signal to other people that are tankies, which is the whole point about. It's weird. This is all crypto fascist arguments that you're giving right now. Like
I don't think tankies need to be crypto. Nor do I think that any of them really are though. That's the thing.
But that's
right?
that's one of the problems that I've had. Is that the first time I talked to Mike, for instance, Mike said he wanted to take back these symbols. Now when I talk to him, he says, oh, well, they have nothing to do with the USSR at all. Like, well, which is it? Like, why can't... I would feel like it's less crypto if people would at least own their positions. And I've debated a number of lefties that refuse to acknowledge...
It feels like he succeeded in taking them back.
But as far as Mike, like I wish the real justification for that is to say that like I'm reclaiming it, right? I don't know, like he has a bad take on it, but like I don't think Mike's a good representative of like most Marxist Leninists.
Is it the non-compete guy then?
No, he's definitely not either.
Is it Hassan Piker? Is it that Caleb Moppet guy or whatever? Like where are these people on the left that are good representations of? Is it Peter Coffin? Like
Caleb Moppet. I think what I posted.
I don't think there's any good representation of them in the public eye, at least not right now.
I don't know. When I think about that,
I think somebody like Richard Wolff would be a pretty fucking good example, right? Like,
is he a Marxist-Leninist?
He is not a Marxist-Leninist.
I was gonna say
the shit that I've seen out of him, absolutely not.
Yeah, he's definitely not an ML.
I mean, the thing is, every time I see like the hammer and sickle, right? When I, at least like this is maybe too biased or whatever because of my personal experience. I always basically see it in the context of memes and just people saying like our bread and like our food. While whenever I see the Nazi symbol, the memes are about like genociding people and killing Jews.
Hold on, I'm not gonna like this argument.
I don't know.
But no. You know this is not true, Pixie. You know that the whole point of the meme culture surrounding crypto shit is that people can get drawn in without having any idea what the memes are about. That was the whole point of Pepe. That was the whole point of the OK symbol. That was the whole point of the Friend World comics that didn't seem really bad, that were really innocuous.
Fucking hammer and sickle are like genuinely trying to draw people into like authoritarian communism.
Yes.
Yeah.
When you're literally saying things like, so first of all, I maybe don't have the political theory to say it, but when you start talking about a vanguard party, it feels like we're getting pretty close to authoritarianism there, okay? But like, when you're defending like these USS, what?
I'm not ML.
Sure. Okay. Like, when you start defending like USSR related things, right? It feels like, and when you start saying things like murder all homeowners and kill all billionaires and, it kind of feels like you're flirting a little bit with some extremist shit. Yeah. Now maybe lefties aren't out there killing people yet, or maybe they won't ever, I guess. But damn, is it annoying to try to have a conversation about anything and these extremists show up?
I don't know. If the bourgeoisie won't give up their property, like maybe it will get to that.
Okay, so fine. So you're there. You're the guy doing it. So you literally, you literally just made the joke that's the equivalent of like, well, I mean, if black people keep fucking having sex with other white women, there's no like white babies left. I mean, maybe that's what's going to happen. Like that's literally what you just did.
This isn't Marxist-Leninism. This isn't tankyism. Like the idea of the proletariat rising up, right? Like and taking out the fucking landlords or whatever. Like this is common among like anarchists and fucking Marxist-Leninists.
Oh yeah, you're right. But I mean,
Maoists, which are like communists, right?
Well, yeah, but also like racism isn't exclusive to fascism either. So like, what's your point there?
Yeah, it can be shared by other things, but Marxism, Leninism is most closely associated with people that supported Stalin and Mao. Like that's what it was for. Like Stalin started it, and if you call yourself a Marxist-Leninist today, that's what you mean. That you would have been somebody that supported somebody like Stalin or Mao, like a violent revolution, like a murdering.
I think largely it's difficult to find like Marxist-Leninists that aren't like verging on fucking tankyism.
Yeah, because they never publicly admit it. But then as soon as you're done having a conversation with them, they all run back their separate. It's like, God damn, dude. That's a guy that I can't wait to send to the gulags.
It wasn't of like Marxist-Leninists. It was of anybody who posts this fucking iconography. And I'm saying that there are anarchists out there who post this iconography. And you're saying, well, actually, they're crypto tankies.
And I'm sure there are good people out there that legitimately wonder if Jews run the world. But just because you're curious about it doesn't mean that you're not complete. It doesn't mean
this is about iconography, not about like, oh, do we think we should have a vanguard party? No,
that's the
fucking people post the fucking hammer and sickle in support of like anarchist ideology, which is about as far removed from tankyism.
And some people post the OK sign. Some people post the OK sign because they think it's a funny meme. That's the whole point with the way this crypto shit works, is that people can spread ideologies that can become harmful later once they've been normalized via humor. But the thing is that when we talk about the alt-right, we all agreed with this when we talked about like stochastic terrorism and crypto fascism, but now it doesn't. None of these things that we learned apply to the left. Like, do you think that the Pakistani flag was just like a harmless, funny meme?
I think naturally, if you get drawn into socialism or communism, you're naturally going to explore the ideas of Marx, Lenin, Stalin, Mao. Like you have to, because like a lot of these things are a lot of these guys had some really fucking good takes and some really fucking bad takes, and we can
What are
learn
some
a
of the
lot.
really fucking good takes that Stalin had?
Fuck knows off the top of my head. Ask it.
What are some of the really fucking good takes that Mao had? Because if I was on here right now saying, listen,
pre-57 Maoist China was pretty good, actually, I think.
if I were to sit here and say over and over again, Hitler had some really fucking good takes, like they did some things really well, but I couldn't like say anything, you don't think we'd be having a similar conversation about, listen, maybe what you're saying is a little bit harmful.
Industrialized genocide of the Jewish peoples and LGBT people.
Okay, and Mao with the Great Leap Forward industrialized the murdering of fucking homeowners, and Stalin with the Holodomor and with Kazakhstan, was able to find ways to starve and murder millions of people. Like, yeah, we can play this game all day. Like,
well, I guess I don't know. I think maybe I really do have like I'm not as experienced as you guys are with internet culture and either Twitch culture and stuff like that. So like also the same thing happened to me like in Friend World. Like I literally thought they were just jokes until somebody made like a call post of it, and I was like, oh shit, no, this is actually like dog whistling and stuff. So you're right about there. What's Friend World?
You were in Friend World?
Well, I looked at Friend World and I thought like, oh, the memes are funny. And then somebody put a post talking about how it was dog whistling. And I was like, holy shit, what the fuck is this? Right? This is so fucked up. But
Oh, no, I mean, I was just going to say, like, I mean, maybe Destiny can make the argument that, like, I've been super duped, and, like, when I post something that involves the hammer and sickle or the color red, like, I'm explicitly advocating for like tanky.
No, it's not about explicitly advocating for it. It's about signaling to other people, right? Like just like Nazis do with
or getting
like
people to
whistles.
flirt with the ideology by bringing them in gently. That's the whole point of this type of humor.
I guess my problem is, are you guys equating Nazism to communism?
No, it doesn't have to be equated to it. The point is that the broader point is that it's capable to get somebody to explore a more extremist ideology by normalizing some of the less harmful aspects of that ideology with humor and memes first. That's the whole goal of the alt-right. And now I've seen a bunch of people doing this weird shit on the left when they do it with this weird flirtations with tankyism or with Marxist-Leninism and these weird takes. You see it all the time with this like, well, the USSR might have been bad, but under capitalism 12 million people starved to death every single second. Or like, oh, well, Mao might have been bad killing landlords, but look how many homeless
point to me, I'm not gonna lie. Like,
so you think that like the USSR
USSR killed, they didn't kill as many people as die under capitalism now.
Oh, so like you're actually already there.
That's not a justification for anything.
Yeah. You're already there. You've actually memed your way into the positions that are so incredibly fucking harmful that you went from start to finish on my argument and you just proved the whole thing for me. Like, holy shit.
I mean, no, I'm just saying that like socialism is better than capitalism, buddy.
Wait, so you would say fascism? Fascism is better than
I agree, but like I don't know.
Can't do it with a body count. Right? It's not gonna work.
Hey, when we've tried socialism, we've killed like fucking 200 million people or whatever the fuck they decide the number is that day. Like, even if it was 200 fucking million people, right? Like that doesn't mean we shouldn't try again because more people are dying now, right? We go like obviously we shouldn't go the fucking route of the USSR. Obviously, we shouldn't go the route of like post 57 Mao, right? But like the idea that like a lot of people died under communism is not a good justification for like not trying communism.
Nobody's saying it's a good take for why we shouldn't justify communism, but it is a good take for why you probably shouldn't support those regimes. That when you come out saying weird shit like Stalin wasn't that bad and China did pretty well under that, it basically sounds like a guy saying well Hitler had some good ideas and Nazi Germany did a lot of good things as well. You sound the exact same. Like the only difference.
Sounds like that, except the ideas that we're endorsing are inherent to socialism, and socialism is like inherently fucking tied to Marx. And the only major examples we have of like socialism being tried in any kind of like mass capacity happen to be like.
I don't know if you know this.
Regime.
Marx wasn't anything. Marx was not a leader. Marx was not a government. Okay, Marx was not an economic dude. Marx was literally a philosopher that wrote down. He was an economic a philosopher of economics. That's all Marx was. So you can't say, well, we don't associate Marxism with states. It's just with the guy Marx. That's not true. If that's the case, then we don't associate capitalism with the United States. We only associate with Adam Smith. Like, that doesn't make sense.
I said the association is like impossible to escape. Like every socialist regime or every socialist like country that has risen up since the USSR has done so partly because of the existence of the USSR. Like a lot of them are fucking inspired by a lot of the things that the fucking leaders said. Like this is very different from Nazism in that there are other regimes, other ideas, other ideologies that have been like birthed out of this that are actually pretty fucking positive in my opinion.
Yeah, that's fine, but that still doesn't mean you have to support the USSR or China or Mao's China.
I mean, I don't support the USSR or post 57 Maoist China. I'm still undecided on pre 57 Maoist China.
Okay.
Hey, Irrelevant. Could you check your DMs, please?
Yeah, well,
Trouble.
Not a big deal.
Names.
Just check, please.
Do you guys think, like, I just want to know out of curiosity, do you think that Nazism in the U.S. or far-right ideologies are kind of like the same level of bad currently as like far-left ideologies?
Nope.
Okay, just wanted to be clear, because comments and stuff. Because I guess like that's my thing when people are like talking about like, oh, the far left is like just as bad as the far right. At least right now, like where the United States stands when it comes to like terms of actual like violence, like domestic terrorism and stuff like that, the far right has much like higher numbers than the far
left. Sure, but that's not
left.
relevant to the conversation at all. Like, I can still be incredibly critical of people flirting with extremist authoritarian ideology in the left without saying, well, I can only care about it I can only care about it if they're actually out there killing people. Like, I still think you can be heavily critical of the ideas.
Well, yeah, this might be a fallacy or faulty logic. But the reason why I brought it up, because I guess I was thinking like, well, the harm that can supposedly be done like by these like flirtations or whatever in the far left, because like the line is blurry and dog whistles like that have not really manifested themselves into like, I guess, real American life.
Well, they haven't manifested themselves into violence, but there are problems. So this is like, in a way, this is my privilege speaking because I spend my life on the internet. Every left-leaning, like, big political outlet, save for David Pakman and Sam Cedar, are like lost to this insane lefty perspective that like flirts with this quasi-authoritarianism constantly.
I just don't think you can fucking escape like having that kind of influence there. Like I would like to say that like I would like to be like, okay, right, we've got to get rid of absolutely everything ever connected to vanguardism.
No, you don't have to. But when you're literally
then we'd have to chuck out all of fucking socialism pretty much.
I'm not saying you have to get rid of everything associated with Marxism. I'm just saying that like a lot of the online
with vanguardism, with Marxism.
Sure, even with vanguardism, whatever. I'm just saying that like a lot of the online conversations with the left are delusional fantasy at this point. There is very little good political opinions about like what's going on in the U.S. now that you can find online on the left these days. Save for like I know of David Pakman who does an okay job, and Sam Cedar I think is really smart.
Well,
but like
I don't know. I don't know a lot about the US, but I cover this shit like based on the UK a lot of times on my channel. So you should swing by maybe.
okay.
I can talk to you about socialism in the UK and a sensible kind of fucking socialism that isn't like fucking tankyism or fucking like rising up and murdering the bourgeoisie, right?
Sure,
like,
that's it's possible that that's true. I can only go by what I see over here in the great lands of the West. But like, holy shit, man! Like and maybe mind waves. Maybe this is where some of my takes like start to bother you. The types of people that shill hardest for Bernie, like Michael Brooks or Kyle Kalinske, have some of the most dog shit political takes I've ever seen in my entire life. Whenever you see these like new candidates rise in the polls, and you see the most ridiculous attacks in the world, where Kyle Kalinske suggests that black people don't like Pete because of his policies, but won't sit there and wonder, well, why do Biden support Bernie, or why do black people support Biden so much more than they support Bernie, right? You'll never think of that, right? Or when you get people like Michael Brooks coming out and be like, this is so disgusting that Pete Buttigieg says that black people should have role models. What a horrible take. Like, what? This is the most standard like milquetoast take in the world. Like all the commentary has been like poisoned with this obsession with this like socialist purity that's like that came out of nowhere. I don't know. It blows my mind.
Yeah, no, like I said, like I don't think there is very much like good representation of like leftists, unfortunately. Like there's like I don't know. It just depends.
Yeah, I
The
agree.
thing is, like, especially in terms of like US politics, like here in the UK, we have a pretty good grounding because of like the pre fucking 80s, like labor movements and all that sort of shit. But in the US, you've had fuck all since like McCarthy because of McCarthyism, because of like the perspective that you have had, not you specifically, but like the American people have had on communism in general, right? And how bad of a word socialism has been in American politics for so long. So like it's kind of nice to see it fucking breaking out amongst Americans and finally becoming like something that's acceptable to talk about. And like I imagine there's going to be a lot of fucking dog shit takes, and there's going to be a lot of like people who are like not saying great things, but yeah, I don't know. The characterization of the entire left movement being comprised of that like frustrates me, and I suppose it's because of the America-centric nature of the internet.
I need to address something in chat because people are like Bernie. Like, what about Bernie being like a representation of the left, or like what about like somebody said like go outside, you internet whales or whatever. Like, look, I'm talking about like yeah, whatever. Like, I'm talking about
outside. We have to watch Michael Brooks, fucking David Packman.
Well, no, this is the thing is that like
we have to watch all that shit.
Well, then
there are good there are good representations of the left, but they're just not in these online spaces. Like I would point towards Noam Chomsky as like a really good representation of leftists, right? But like but he's more of an academic. He's not really in this like online sphere, right? So I don't know.
Yeah.
This is why I tell you what, Destiny, I would love to see you, because you have the platform to fucking pull it in. I would love to see you sit down and have a conversation with somebody like Richard Wolff or Noam Chomsky. Like,
I mean, I
feel
can
like
try
this
it.
would
That's
change
like the
your
next
opinion
step. But like
immeasurably.
every time somebody tells me have a conversation with this guy, all of them have been insanely disappointing. And I
Right,
said
but
I
we're
would.
talking about
Let's do it, Fred.
academics over Twitch streamers, right? And I've just explained how like fucking.
I mean, I talked to Michael
Americans-
Albert, who did the whole book on participatory economics. That was supposed to be like an academic. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, yeah, I guess I've
mean,
talked
I
to that
doubt
Ben
you'll be able
Burgess
to get
guy a
hold
few
of Noam
times. Who's supposed to be an
Chomsky, but-
academic. Like,
Ben Burgess, I like Ben Burgess. He's a really good guy, but he gets very angry when he argues.
More of like a celebrity academic, like a Bill Nye or something.
The
I
Bill
mean,
Nye of leftism.
well, if we're gonna talk
like
about
that.
celebrity academics, I'm
yeah.
pretty sure that Richard Wolff would definitely count as a celebrity.
Yeah,
academic.
Richard Wolff would
I agree
definitely
with you.
count
No, I
as a
totally agree.
celebrity academic. But
Yeah.
but I think he's good. You know, he doesn't do the ranty stuff that you might have been objecting to with Ben Burgess. He's pretty calm and collected generally most of the time, and I think he gives good speeches. So I mean, that's just me.
Okay.
But
All right.
yeah.
Okay. I don't want to like take
And of
over
course,
your guys'
swing by
like,
my channel.
Yeah, of
Do
course.
it, Destiny.
Okay.
Come along.
Do-
Fucking
do-
sit
Too
in my
fucking late,
cat.
dude.
Do you have any
Talk shit
parting
to me from there.
parting words for me? I don't want to like take over the whole shit, so I'll leave.
I mean,
Sorry.
you
took
can
over
stay
this
here and hang out.
podcast since before you even
I didn't
came
know
on,
this
dude.
was gonna be such a
You're
big
already
conversation.
in.
I'm sorry. Fuck me, dude.
Like,
Stay and hang out. We're on this fucking roundtable now, dude. What do you mean?
I actually feel pretty good. I usually get like 20 viewers, and somehow I got Destiny to break his like no roundtable December thing.
True.
No, it's because you have alert, you know.
fucking nice, Leon. Well done, buddy. Well done. So, you know what? You need to like get a few more people who have problems with mature streamers on your stream. And just
Yeah, I wouldn't mind
What
having
if-
bigger streamers
by the-
on.
I'll tell you what. Next week I'll bitch out Hassan just for you, buddy.
By the way, I just want to hark on what I said at the beginning. All you have to do is talk some shit and you summon Destiny. It happens every time. Every time.
Okay. I love all of you. I'm going to bed. Okay. I'm not even supposed to be here. Goodbye. Peace out.
Have a good one, dude.
I shouldn't have gone on. I knew this is exactly what would happen. I should have just not done it. I fucked up and I broke my promise to all of you by doing it. I'm so sorry.